All right, so what's up everybody? GrimmGreen back here today. Got some controversy. Now, like in the title, when I say can I talk about this, I mean this more in like a YouTube sense. I genuinely don't know how YouTube is going to react to this video. And I also kind of mean it in a way like maybe my subscribers and viewer base would be a little upset about talking about this today. But I legitimately think it could help people, and it's a pretty important part of this discussion that's going on right now. So let me first say this. I am not a doctor. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. I do not sell any of the products we're going to be talking about today, and I will not have any links in the description to any of the products we're talking about today. All right, so with all of that said, let's talk about the IQOS. So I was a cigarette smoker for about 18 years of my life. Way back in 2009, I discovered this crummy little electronic cigarette from China. I started using it, and it was a little bit of a rough transition, but eventually I completely made the switch from combustible tobacco cigarettes to far less harmful vapor products. Millions and millions of people around the world share that very similar story. And the real success story in switching to vaping is that it's a tobacco harm reduction tool, which means that it's not inherently safe or 100% safe. It was designed to be less harmful than the deadly combustible tobacco cigarettes that are currently available on the market. So I want us all a little bit to keep in mind the harm reduction aspect of this, because much like the liquid nicotine vapor products we're all used to, the IQOS is a form of tobacco harm reduction. The FDA recently approved the IQOS to be sold in the United States, although it's not really available anywhere just yet. Their only test market is in Atlanta, Georgia. They have an IQOS store set up in Atlanta, Georgia, where you can go in and try the products. And even though the IQOS did go through the PMTA, the pre-market tobacco application, in order to be allowed to be sold on the market, the FDA makes it very, very clear that the IQOS is not an FDA-approved product. But the FDA themselves also do recognize the difference between combustion and heat not burn. Combustion is the enemy. The FDA says, through the FDA's scientific evaluation of the company's application, peer-reviewed published literature, and other sources, the agency found that the aerosol produced by the IQOS tobacco heating system contains fewer toxic chemicals than cigarette smoke, and many of the toxins identified are present at lower levels than in cigarette smoke. They estimate that heat not burn tobacco products are around 89 to 91% less harmful for you than burning combustible tobacco cigarettes. And truly and honestly, the IQOS system offers two things that liquid nicotine vapor products simply cannot. But before we get to that, real quickly, I just want to show you how it gets used. And I just want to take this opportunity to reiterate this fact. If you are not a currently addicted adult smoker, don't bother. Don't even bother with the IQOS. Don't even bother with vaping. This is your final warning. Just stay nicotine free if you can stay nicotine free. So what I have in my hand right now, I believe, is the IQOS Duo. I bought this in New Zealand. I used it twice in New Zealand. I got it back to the United States. I've used it once since I've got back, and I haven't really picked it up or been regularly using it since then. I really just bought this for my own educational purposes, I guess. Being in the space that I'm in, I think it's important to know about other products out there that aren't just vapor products. I'm a pretty avid snus user as well, which is a form of tobacco harm reduction. And like I said earlier, the IQOS is tobacco harm reduction. So this is kind of the IQOS PCC. It's a little personal charging case. It's got a USB-C charging right here. When you tap this button on the top, it's going to illuminate and show you how full it is, as well as this extra dot on the end shows you how full your actual little IQOS unit is charged. So ideally, you'd like to look down and see a full stripe of lights to know that the PCC is charged, and then that additional light on the end to know that your actual little stick battery is also charged. And that's literally all this gets used for. This goes in and out and charges when you're not using it. So this is your actual IQOS battery vaporizer. And any regular vapor out there watching this video, this isn't gonna look like anything different to you. Kind of looks like an Ego battery. It's got a clicky little button on it. This top part pulls off and disassembles for cleaning. Sometimes after you have used one of the heat sticks, some of the tobacco will still be stuck up in there. You kind of give it a little you know, smack on a table and it'll kind of come falling out. I'm not going to be able to show you this, but there's basically what looks like a knife blade coming right out of the middle of this. That knife blade is meant to pierce your heat stick and then rise to the proper temperature in order to vaporize and not combust your tobacco. Heat not burn is something that has been around for years and years and years, and the cannabis industry has been using heat not burn for years and years and years and years as a way to avoid combustion. So in New Zealand, these are the wonderful packages that your heat sticks come in. You can see HEETs right there, which I think is a really dumb name. But this is the packaging that all tobacco in New Zealand comes in. Big yellow warnings, awful images, your smoking harms children. Really very graphic. And one thing that I noticed while being in New Zealand is there's still a lot of smokers in New Zealand, and even myself, I found myself seeing completely past the warnings. At first you see it and you go, oh, that's kind of a, what's that little kid with the mask on, your smoking harms children, and you can't avoid it. You just have to look at it. But if you're just exposed to it constantly, and you just keep seeing it daily, it's something that you just see past. I legitimately don't see the use in having these graphic warnings on there. That's just me. So what you're gonna find inside is, it's a lot like a pack of cigarettes. There's that silver foil you're used to. You can see the top. It looks like a row of cigarettes there. I legitimately don't know what I am and am not allowed to show on YouTube right now. I've seen smokers doing smoking videos on YouTube with tobacco cigarettes. Basically, this is what you're gonna get out of it. Just one tiny little heat stick. This isn't rolled tobacco. This isn't the tobacco that's the same as a cigarette. You can read this for yourself on any of the Philip Morris International or IQOS websites, but they explain the process they use to get this tobacco. It's essentially been specifically formulated for heat not burn, not combustion. Maybe this is the part I won't show on camera. Maybe YouTube will be cool with this. I'll just show it. You just take your little heat stick, you put it tobacco side down, and you kind of just press it down and spear it onto that little knife in the middle. So real quickly before I fire this up, I want to mention those two things that I thought that the IQOS can kind of accomplish that regular liquid nicotine vaping might not accomplish for everybody. And the first is flavor. Every vapor that I have ever known or have ever talked to, including myself, knows how important a flavor is. When I was a cigarette smoker, getting that first flavor that you could actually use all day, that wouldn't annoy you, that wouldn't get gross, and was something that you actually enjoyed, was a very difficult process. Finding the right flavor is really important, and not everybody is going to be satisfied by the same flavor. Not every smoker can pick up a bottle of cola liquid and be satisfied by it, or strawberries and cream, or banana cheesecake. Those types of flavors happened to work for me and happened to work for a lot of people, but there's a lot of people that just aren't into it. There are a lot of long-term smokers that really do desire that flavor of their brand that they're used to, that tobacco or that menthol. And to that, I would say there has not been a product I have ever used ever that has come as close as this does to the flavor of a menthol cigarette. I was a menthol cigarette smoker, and having this IQOS for the first time in New Zealand felt like I was cheating. It tasted exactly like a menthol cigarette. And the second thing about the IQOS is there is a definitive beginning and end to the process. Some feedback I get from new vapors is they don't know if they're using it correctly, because there is no real beginning and an end. With a cigarette, you pulled it out, you lit the end of the cigarette, you smoked it down, and then that was the end and you knew you were done. With vapor products, it's really much more of a just vape until you're satisfied. Once you get the hang of it, very easy. But initially, that beginning and an end, I feel, are pretty critical for smokers. So there's only one button on the battery. You just press it and hold it. It's gonna illuminate and it's gonna vibrate a little bit. And that just means that it's warming up. It's gonna vibrate again to give me a little signal that's like, hey, you're ready to go. You're ready to use this now. And you kind of treat the IQOS like it is a burning cigarette, because that heating element in there is continuously heating the tobacco. It has a definite beginning and end. It just vibrated, and now I can take a puff like it was a cigarette. Cheers. It's It's incredible. And I don't mean it's incredible that I think it's incredibly good and I love it so much. I think it's incredible because this really does mimic the way a cigarette feels, the way a cigarette kind of smells and handles. It's got that paper filter on your heat stick, which even further kind of makes it feel like a cigarette. The experience is as close to smoking a cigarette as you can get without combustion. That's all I'm really gonna do from this. I'm just gonna kind of let this turn itself off. And honestly, with the exception of, you know, a few rare cases, there's not gonna be really a time where I'm gonna recommend something like the IQOS Heat Not Burn above something like a traditional liquid nicotine pod system. For me personally, and I'm assuming the majority of the people watching this video, this is intensely satisfying. I personally find this much more satisfying than using the IQOS. But there are large groups of smokers out there, these ingrained smokers that have been smoking for 30, 40, 50 years plus, that might honestly be a little bit too intimidated by pod systems and refilling liquid nicotine and getting liquid nicotine levels and tapering your nicotine down and finding a flavor and nicotine level that's satisfying to you. I mean, let's be honest, there is a little bit of a learning curve to vaping. There is also a learning curve to this IQOS, but the learning curve is much more in line with the old smoking ritual that you used to do. You got a pack of something that kind of looks like cigarettes. You take your little heat stick out, you pop it on your IQOS, you turn it on, and you smoke it. That's it. The aroma is kind of like warm tobacco cigarettes. It's not something, honestly, that I find particularly pleasurable or enjoyable. This video is already way too long. At the end of the day, what this comes down to is there are cigarette smokers that this will help. And there are cigarette smokers that this will help. The personal preference part's gonna have to be up to you. The personal preference part for me is I far prefer traditional liquid nicotine vapor products to something like Heat Not Burn like the IQOS. But that doesn't mean that the IQOS isn't just as legitimate of a tobacco harm reduction tool. Cool? Cool. Well, that's really all I got for today, everybody. Thank you guys seriously so much for watching. No links are allowed in the description. Thank you, YouTube. As for me, I'm gonna keep vaping my cocoa. I'm gonna put this IQOS to the side, probably forever. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I have it. I'm glad I got to experience it, but I mean, come on. So good, so satisfying. And remember, no matter what YouTube, any crooked politician tells you, yeah, absolutely, let's keep on vaping.